What you tolerate determines what you become. Let me tell you something that took me many years to understand, not because it was complicated, but because it was uncomfortable. Life doesn't usually collapse all at once. It erodes, quietly, slowly. One small allowance that erodes, quietly, slowly. One small allowance at a time. One excuse here, one compromise there. And before you know it, you wake up one day and wonder how you ended up so far from where you once promised yourself you'd be. And the truth is, you didn't fall. You tolerated the slide. I once met a man who complained endlessly about his job. Every conversation came back to how underpaid he was, how unappreciated he felt, how management didn't respect him. I asked him one simple question. How long have you been there? He said, 15 years. 15 years of complaints. 15 years of frustration, 15 years of tolerating a situation he claimed he hated. And then he said something revealing. He said, well, it's not that bad. And right there, in that sentence, was the whole story. What you tolerate becomes your life. See, we like to think that our future is shaped by big decisions, dramatic turning points, and once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. But more often than not, your future is shaped by what you allowed to stay. The messy habits you keep meaning to fix. The relationships that drain you but feel familiar. The standards you lower just to keep the peace. None of these things shout, they whisper. And those whispers, repeated over time, become the loudest voice in your life. When you tolerate being late, you become careless with time. When you tolerate being late, you become careless with time. When you tolerate poor health, you become accustomed to low energy. When you tolerate mediocrity, you become comfortable with less than you're capable of, not because you plan to, but because tolerance is a silent agreement. It's life asking, is this acceptable? And you answering, I guess so. I had a mentor once who told me something that stuck with me forever. He said, you don't have to change your life today, but you do have to stop approving what's destroying it. That's a powerful thought. Approval doesn't always look like applause. Sometimes approval looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like staying. Sometimes it looks like laughing something off that should have been corrected. And life takes notes. Think about your home. If you tolerate a little mess today, it becomes a bigger mess tomorrow. Not because the mess is evil, but because disorder grows when it's allowed. The same thing happens with your character. Small acts of neglect don't stay small. They grow roots. And eventually, they become who you are. We often ask, why doesn't my life change? Without asking, what am I allowing that needs to go? Because growth doesn't begin with motivation. Growth begins with intolerance. Intolerance for excuses. Intolerance for self-betrayal. Intolerance for living below your values. And that kind of intolerance isn't loud or angry. It's calm, firm, and decisive. Let me tell you another story. There was a woman I knew who always said she wanted more confidence. She read books about it, watched videos about it, even attended seminars about it. But every day she tolerated people speaking over her, dismissing her ideas, and minimizing her presence. And confidence never came. Not because confidence is mysterious, but because confidence cannot grow in an environment of constant self-disrespect. What you tolerate trains people how to treat you, and it trains you how to treat yourself. Life has an interesting way of matching your standards. If your standards are low, life doesn't argue. If your standards are unclear, life fills in the blanks. If your standards are strong, life rises to meet them. Not instantly, not magically, but gradually, inevitably. You see, discipline is not punishment. Discipline is self-respect in action. And tolerance is often the absence of that respect. When you tolerate staying up late knowing it ruins your next day, you're not lazy. You're unguarded. When you tolerate negative thinking, you're not weak. You're untrained. And training begins the moment you decide that certain things are no longer acceptable. There's a quiet dignity that comes with raising your standards. It doesn't mean you judge others. It means you protect your future. It means you stop negotiating with habits that cost you your peace. It means you stop saying someday to changes that require a decision today. I once heard it said that success is easier to maintain than failure is to escape. And that's because failure is sticky. It sticks through tolerated habits, tolerated attitudes, tolerated environments. You don't wake up successful by accident, but you also don't wake up unsuccessful by accident. One is built by intention. The other is built by allowance. Ask yourself this honestly. What are you putting up with that you know you shouldn't? Not what sounds dramatic, not what makes a good story, but what quietly drains you, what quietly delays you, what quietly delays you, what quietly dulls your ambition. Because that thing, whatever it is shaping you more than your goals are. And here's the part most people miss. When you stop tolerating what's wrong, you don't instantly get what's right. There's a gap, a space where discomfort lives, a season where things feel awkward, lonely, uncertain, and many people run back to old tolerances just to escape that feeling. But that gap is where growth happens. That gap is where your new standards learn to stand on their own. Change always asks a price up front, while tolerance charges interest over time. That's why tolerance feels easier in the moment and expensive later. And that's why discipline feels difficult now and rewarding later. You always pay. The question is when and how. If you tolerate being surrounded by people with no vision, don't be surprised when yours fades. If you tolerate constant distraction, don't be confused when focus disappears. If you tolerate telling yourself you'll try instead of deciding you will, don't wonder why momentum never comes. Your life today is not a punishment. It's a report card. It reflects what you've allowed, what you've repeated, and what you've accepted. And the good news is, report cards can change, but not with excuses. Report cards can change, but not with excuses, with standards. You don't have to overhaul your entire life tonight, but you do have to draw one line, just one. Something you say, not anymore. It might be how you speak to yourself. It might be how you manage your mornings. It might be how you let people treat your time. That one line becomes the beginning of a new direction. And let me be clear, raising your standards will cost you. It may cost you comfort. It may cost you certain relationships. It may cost you familiarity. But what it gives you in return is far greater. It gives you alignment. It gives you self-trust. It gives you the quiet confidence of knowing that you are no longer living in contradiction. Because the most exhausting thing in the world is pretending you're okay with something you know is wrong. That internal conflict drains more energy than hard work ever will. Peace comes when your actions match your values, and that starts with refusing to tolerate what violates them. Here is the moral of the story, and it's simple but not easy. You do not become what you want. You become what you allow. Every tolerance is a vote for the person you're becoming, and every refusal is a step toward the person you could be. So choose carefully what gets your approval. Choose carefully what stays. Because your future is not shaped by what you dream about once in a while. It's shaped by what you put up with every single day.